Welcome to Coffee with Kupke, a production of St. Paul Inside the Walls. Here on Coffee with Kupke, we grab a cup of coffee, at least we're claiming this is coffee. We sit with Monsignor Raymond Kupke, the pastor of St. Anthony's in Hawthorne, professor at Immaculate Conception Seminary, diocesan archivist. We sit with Monsignor Kupke to delve into the history of Catholicism in the Diocese of Paterson. My name is Father Paul Manning. I am the vicar for Evangelization for the Diocese of Paterson. And here I am with Monsignor Kupke. So grab your cup of coffee and let's jump right in. I'm going to take a sip. Monsignor Kupke, I don't know how to tell you this, but we have finished the never-ending chapter.
I'm sure I could find more stuff in it.
No, yeah. So we're moving into chapter.
I do have to make an addendum, though, to chapter 6, because I got some flack from the Salesian sisters.
Oh, no.
Who, of course, work with me, so I have to be...
And so they have to watch Coffee
Right.
with Kupke. Yeah.
Well, actually, they didn't. Somebody alerted to them that they had been omitted. They felt that we were talking about the influx of religious orders into the Morristown area. And of course, they don't fit into that.
Right,
that
that's right. Well, somebody mentioned that to me as well. And I said, well, we were dealing with the first 15 years in this particular area.
And the number coming into Morris County, of course, they've always been in Passaic or Sussex County.
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't love you, but...
Yeah. And was it the same era?
Basically, they come in the same era. But
Okay, so yeah, different part of the diocese.
County, yeah.
Yeah, so we just cannot get out of chapter 6 here. Well, we're now going to move on to chapter 7, which is entitled A Diocese for Paterson, 1937 to 1947. Right. So we have traversed almost 200 years of Catholic history in northwestern New Jersey. And finally, after 200 years, we're going to see the establishment of the Diocese of Paterson.
We are.
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned before that there were rumors going back as far as the 1880s about someday there being a Paterson diocese. But it did not actually happen, of course, until the end of 1937.
And when it happened, apparently, it was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people.
A big surprise, yes.
Interesting.
You're considering the reliability of ecclesiastical rumors.
Yeah.
It shocked me.
How did that not get out?
I remember being in the seminary when Trenton celebrated its centennial, and the bishop felt compelled to issue a statement that the diocese was not going to be split before the centennial because there were so many rumors.
That the Diocese of Metuchen would be formed.
Right.
Yeah.
But with us, it was very different.
I know. And it came right before Christmas.
It came right before Christmas, right. In 1937, there were a flurry of growth in the American church. So not only Newark, but also Louisville and Detroit were made archdioceses in the same period, the same year, and also divided. And so there were a number of new dioceses, but we were kind of at the end of the year, and it came out kind of piecemeal. So in a way that is not common today. First, they announced that Newark had been made a metropolitan see, an archdiocese, and separated from the New York province.
Okay.
And people were so unprepared that they looked at each other and said, why? There's only one other diocese in New Jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the next day, they announced Camden and Paterson.
Okay.
But not the new bishops. That came a few days after that.
Okay. Yeah, trickling out.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a significant question, but I was wondering if you made the establishment of the diocese chapter 7 in the book for the import of the number 7? How did this end up in chapter 7?
It just
That's the way it fell.
that's
fell
the way
out.
it fell. Yeah.
Did you map the chapters and the eras with Bishop Rodimer?
No.
Okay.
To be honest, forgive me, Bishop, I almost didn't show him anything because he was so interested in it. I was afraid he was going to micromanage me.
Yeah, and he would do massive editing.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, I sketched out 10 chapters for the book, by what I thought were reasonable things and errors to cover.
Moments, yeah. Okay.
The bulge was Dean McNulty.
Yes.
Who
Yeah.
covers several errors all in one lifetime.
Yeah. So the apostolic, is it a constitution that establishes a diocese?
Recta Cuiuvis.
Yeah, recta cuiuvis. And I looked it up. It says everyone's right. Everyone's right. So I'm imagining the first lines are talking
Right,
about
it's always the first line.
everyone's right to pastoral care or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
So it demands the institution of the Diocese of Paterson. So Thomas McLaughlin is named the first bishop. And he's our bishop for about 10 years.
Right.
And at the end of this chapter, you talk about him being the right man for the job.
He was. He was very much a character. It's hard to imagine him functioning today, but
Yeah.
he was the right man for the right era. He was born in New York City, but raised in Montclair. So he kind of knew the borders of the new diocese. He was very part
Close
of
to Clifton. Yeah.
Precipity, because he knew from his experience in the Montclair Caldwell area that Precipity was right beyond that, and
people from Parsippany were going to church in the Archdiocese of Newark. Yeah.
That's why St. Peter's is the first one.
Yeah.
He was educated in Europe.
Yeah, that was so interesting. He was educated in Innsbruck. Yeah, by the Jesuits.
Right. There was a time when Newark sent men to Louvain, Innsbruck, and Rome. Innsbruck continued into the 60s. They still had a guy studying there.
And if I'm not mistaken, he was there. Was he there for 8 years to get not only a master's but a doctorate?
Right.
And for a big part of his career was an educator in all kinds of fields. English,
Not
classical
a big part,
studies.
his entire career.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also became a Germanophile, after his 8 years in Austria, and got into a little trouble with it during World War II because they
knew he had German connections. Yeah.
Right. Well, he would send care packages.
Oh.
And, that was not a good thing to do.
Yeah, and there was somebody who objected to stained glass windows made in Germany going into the seminary, right, at Darlington?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, people were keeping a close eye on things.
Well, in World War I, we've talked about two towns in New Jersey changing their name rather than have a German connection. So
yeah, it kept going.
But McLaughlin, yes, as you said, his entire career was in education. He was sent to Seton Hall, and the seminary was still at Seton Hall at that point. So ultimately, he becomes president and rector of the seminary at the same time.
I know.
And then adds to that the role of vicar general.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So no wonder he had a heart attack, right? In 1941 was his first heart attack.
Yeah.
Right. He was named a bishop. Then 4 years later.
Yeah.
And he battled ill health for the rest of his time.
Yeah.
So at one point you mentioned that much of his work was done from his residence,
Right.
and up in Walpack during the summers.
Walpack, famous Walpack.
And yet at the same time, he managed all these initiatives and growth, and it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. When he was named, when they realized, when the name became public, they were not happy.
Who's they?
The clergy.
Because many had him in the seminary.
Almost all of them had him in the seminary. And he was a tough, by the book. He was a very mercurial, by the book kind of person. We have letters in the archives. He was so precise about what he did that we have letters from him to him.
Yes, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Because he was rector, president, and vicar general.
Yeah.
He would write.
And auxiliary bishop, too.
And ultimately the first auxiliary bishop of Newark.
Yeah.
So he would write a letter, to himself.
Yeah.
Writing as vicar general, announcing to himself as rector that, the archbishop will come and make a visit of the seminary. Dear Monsignor McLaughlin, sincerely yours, Monsignor McLaughlin.
This reminds me of George Burns in the movie, was it Oh God? Do you remember the movie Oh God? And he's taking the oath. Do you, before God, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? And he says, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help me.
Right.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me.
So help you.
If it pleases the court, and even if it doesn't please the court, I'm God, Your Honor.
Well, McLaughlin was that kind of a guy. He was very, very precise, but in a way that they were a little surprised at him as
a bishop,
as a diocesan bishop,
because it was a different side.
They saw a different side of him. First of all, this was the first pastoral role he had ever had.
Oh, okay.
He had never been in a parish.
Oh, wow, interesting.
So, all of a sudden, his latent pastoral genes were in full swing.
That's in some ways like Bishop Serratelli, who helped in parish, but yeah.
But, also Bishop Bolton's.
Okay.
Also only had 1 year on a parish, and then so McLaughlin is actually the one who moves the seminary to Darlington.
Yes.
It's during his time, and then remained as rector and president for a year or two before shuttling back and forth between the two.
Yeah, and conducting a massive building project and fundraising, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I wanted to mention, as you mentioned in the beginning, that at the time that that Paterson was split from Newark was the 6th largest diocese in the country.
Right.
So we kind of forget that Newark is that big. And Newark is still rather big, is it not?
Still one of the largest, yeah. Well, it's, Northeast New Jersey has always been in the shadow of New York, when in reality it's almost as big as, at least Catholic-wise.
Yeah.
And if you take the 4 dioceses, Rockville Center, Brooklyn, New York, Newark, the 4 of them are almost identical in size. Brooklyn, I think, being the biggest.
Wow. So interestingly, when Paterson was split off, you mentioned that Paterson ended up with 70% of the land area of the diocese, but only 16% of the Catholics.
Right.
Yeah. So the Catholic population was really concentrated in the urban areas.
Right. I once had the opportunity in 1976.
Joe, you were still in God's pocket back then, right?
We were doing something for the bicentennial, and I had the opportunity to interview Bishop Bolton.
Right, we talked about that. Yeah, he was up. Where was he at that point?
He was retired.
Okay, living locally
in West Orange.
Okay,
in Llewellyn Park, So, I point blank said to him, I said, why was our diocese established? Because he was Chancellor of Newark when it happened, so he would have been in on the... And he said that the feeling was that, much of the energy and interest of the Newark Diocese was focused on the cities, Jersey City, Bayonne, Newark, East Orange. And he said there was a sense that a lot was about to happen in the western part of the diocese, and that it might be advantageous to have somebody out there supervising it.
Yeah, the growth. Yeah. Did Boland live very, very long?
Boland lived well into his 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first chancery originally was a stable, right, for
the building
McNulty.
The building that has had more uses than...
and then a clubhouse of some kind.
It was also the science labs of the Cathedral High School.
Okay. I was just thinking that there are probably good metaphors there for chancery somehow. A stable, a science lab, a clubhouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the bishop's...
Now it's gone.
Yeah.
No.
The bishop's residence.
The bishop's residence
was... So tell us about that, because there are a lot of stories that are told about the bishop's residence is in Paterson, and it's a beautiful mansion.
Italianate mansion, mini mansion by today's standards, anyway.
Yeah.
On the east side of Paterson, almost in the Newark Diocese, actually. It's only maybe 3 blocks away from the boundary.
Yeah.
But the Scola family, which were one of the silk manufacturing families in the city.
The silk Scolas.
And parishioners of St. Anthony's in Paterson.
Okay.
So when word came out of the establishment of the diocese, they donated the house to the first bishop.
Was it their house, or did they buy a house and give it to them?
It was their house.
And they moved out?
They had lived in it. I think they were probably at a point in the family where the children, were out of the house and doing their own lives now. And so they gave it up and gave it to...
But
there's always been, rumors, which I don't know how we nail them down, but that there was a proviso that if the bishop did not live in the house, it would revert to the family. Oddly enough, in the last couple of months, I saw a photograph of the Scola family handing the deed to Bishop McLaughlin. So I'm not so sure.
Was there a string attached to the deed?
I don't know.
So that story is apocryphal?
We don't know if it's an urban legend or if it's...
But you don't have any documentation to that effect in the archives?
If I really search, God knows what we would find.
Okay,
But so far, they've all lived there, so it hasn't become an issue.
Now, is the Scola family still around?
I believe they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I was marveling at the fanfare that accompanied the arrival of McNulty. We're talking tens of thousands
McLaughlin.
McLaughlin, I'm sorry, not McNulty, but tens of thousands of people. Now,
there was no TV back then.
Okay, because I'm thinking we've seen bishops come, and I mean they're a couple thousand, but tens of thousands of people lining the streets. I mean, it just seems to me, was it because Paterson was so thoroughly Catholic at that point, or?
Well, it's a number of things, and actually that entry, that formal entry, continued right up until Redeemer. Redeemer is the first one not to have the formal entry into the city with the mayor and everything, because he was already living in the diocese.
Oh, okay.
But, McLaughlin's was, and they all followed the same route. They all came up basically Route 20 from Newark.
Okay.
And were welcomed basically where Route 4 crosses the Passaic River.
Okay.
So right by the Fair Lawn Bridge there. As they crossed over the bridge into Passaic County, And then from there on Broadway, all the way down to
The cathedral.
the cathedral. There
Yeah.
would be,
And it was a parade.
yes, and all the Catholic schools of the city
Okay.
would all be there with several hundred kids each, all with flags and waving. And so,
And I'm sure the Knights of Columbus.
doubtless,
Yeah. Okay.
you know, we have pictures of McLaughlin being welcomed on the steps of the cathedral, and it's a big crowd.
Wow. And you say that the Te Deum was sung. Mm-hmm. We don't really sing the Te Deum much anymore.
We sing it all the time. We just don't sing it as a...
As the Latin hymn, you mean?
Te Deum is basically, Holy God, we praise thy name.
Yeah. Okay.
But
and it
we don't
comes
sing
at
it
the
as
end of
as a
the.
separate event.
Yeah. Yeah. And then an act of obeisance,
Yes.
right? So all the priests would
All
come.
the priests, yes.
Now I'm trying to remember Bishop Saratelli and Bishop Sweeney's. We don't do that, do we?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Sorry, bishops.
No.
And there was a party at the Alexander Hamilton Hotel.
Right.
Now, Alexander Hamilton would have been.
The founding father of Paterson. It was his idea to create an industrial city in the new republic. So he's considered to be the father of Paterson. Now, there's a statue of him at the Great Falls.
Yeah.
He's the one who brought George Washington on a picnic to the Great Falls and showed him the possibility
Yes.
of this hydroelectric power, not hydroelectric, but
Yeah.
hydraulic power.
Yeah. And the Alexander Hamilton Hotel is no longer there.
It's no longer there. Yeah. I'm fond of sometimes when we have ordinations and I get to welcome the visiting clergy to the, you know, I'm fond of saying that Paterson is the largest city in the United States without a hotel room.
That's true. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about the personality of Bishop McLaughlin and the years that follow the founding of the diocese in 1937. Let's leave it there. I want all of you who are listening or watching to make sure that you keep an eye out or an ear out for the next episode of Coffee with Kupke. In order to stay on top of new releases, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you are on YouTube, please do drop a like and hit the bell for notifications. While you're at it, make sure to check out the other shows produced by the diocese. Those shows are Beyond the Beacon, hosted by Bishop Kevin Sweeney and Jay Agnish, our Director of Communications, and the Paul Street Journal, hosted by Brian Hansberger and Freddie Garcia. I want to give a special thanks to Joe Ginexi, our sound and visual engineer, Caitlin Ferrari, who's involved in pre- and post-production, and Freddie Garcia, who's helping out with this podcast in addition to doing his own. With all that said, I just want to thank you for joining us in Coffee with Kupke. Keep making Catholic history in the Diocese of Paterson.